Yeah, welcome. You may have probably heard pilots joking about the fact that more fuel is better than a bad rear. But what about the opposite? Is Iceman better than a bad pilot in DCS? And do you even need a dedicated pilot in the F-14 in the first place? To answer this question, I decided to play a bunch of missions in the F-14. Obviously, there are many operations that only the pilot can do, but besides those, most of the work will be done from the back. Believe it or not, I have never done a startup from the front, never used the gun, never landed. The only thing I can do is sort out the AHRS for obvious reasons, and a minimum of air to ground, since it is mostly done from the front. I have assigned the basic controls such as trim, VSL, trigger, and so on, and that's pretty much it. The first mission is from the Cage the Bear campaign, and see us departing to intercept a bunch of boogies coming from the north. First things first, I did a bit of housekeeping. For whatever reason, in fact, the bullseye was in an awful position, so I moved it. And I added a steer point, later used to highlight the coastline and have more awareness. Since the aircraft was already set up, I spent some time adjusting my office, setting up the nav grid, the 4 radar modes, settings, and so on.
Hi. Everything is fine, and I remember where it should be. This pilot stuff. Almost. Flaps coming up.
Post-departure, I sorted the IHRS, whilst pretending to be able to maintain proper carrier takeoff procedures, such as BRC post-offset, 500 feet and 300 knots.
Yeah, that's right. Alright. Alright, cool, man. Let's go.
Next, back to the comfort of my office, I instructed Iceman to climb and turn. Got awareness of the group of interest, committed, got rid of Nagrid, and assessed the geometry. This part was easy. Target aspect 30 left. I let the group drift left, cooling down the intercept and allowing the aspect to grow slowly, whilst the slant range was going down. The aim was getting to the textbook's 40 degrees before correcting the collision. As the range decreased, the group turned out to be more numerous than expected, and at a certain point they turned to my right, as visible on the DDD. The correction was slow, and this is where a pilot may come handy, as Iceman is chronically afraid of turning tighter than 1G. At 10 nautical miles, target aspect was too low, resulting in lateral separation of about 30,000 feet. For a pilot this is not a problem, it's just a matter of using a greater displacement. In this case, cut away, 10 degrees ATA should be enough. But what happens when the guy at the helm has done this like twice in his life? Yep, crap. I turned too early without building the appropriate angles, resulting in a mess.
Okay, so I can't really do it easy. Oh boy, I messed up. I messed up the conversion. Alright, so, okay. I must say that the pilot would have done it better. The angles weren't awful, just that I'm an awful pilot.
With the boogies escalated to hostiles, I switched to YR, as the Fox 2 seemed more appropriate. I then lost awareness and, as usual, a quick jump in the backseat sorts everything out.
this ever. Do I really have something on the nose? I do, but he's in the middle of clutter. Come on, show me your face. Haha. There you go, IFF.
I immediately found the next target, quick IFF, and then I engaged with the M7 Sparrow as he tried to descend. Easy shot and another kill.
What's the range? 3 miles. Okay, Fox 1. Yeah, good luck with that.
With the last remaining hostiles chased by the friendlies, I dropped and resumed to the north. All of a sudden, massive pop-up in that direction. I worked the geometry, got into position and took the shot. Due to the mess, I didn't even care too much about reverse vertigo. As long as the fitting tank was scanned out, I was fine. Something I forgot instead is to set its size too large. And there they go, 4 Phoenix flying when the target suddenly turned on the ACM. No extrapolated, too far energy-wise to sustain until burn-through, thus missiles probably were trashed or switched to Amon Jam, which is the same thing in DCS in terms of support.
FML. Right,
So what to do in this case? Well, the missiles were probably going to steer up the bomb formation, and they didn't need support, so I was free to maneuver. Since I was approaching the burn-through for bombers, which is about 12 nautical miles, switched to Sparrow, locked on something and started the chase. In this specific case, I looked for something at my circa 10 o'clock. Since we were close to 0 cut, the target aspect should have been similar to the antenna triangle, which makes this a decent situation for a conversion into a rear quarter Fox 1, leaving me behind the formation in good position for a follow-up Fox 2 if necessary. Although, of course, I pulled too much in the turn and it ended up at the target's 9 o'clock rather than 7. Given the range, I didn't turn to lead collision, but the Sparrow is just fine. Right after, I spotted another target and engaged it with my last aim-9. It was an easy shot, but I realized I don't know how to engage the Seeker. So I aligned until I got turned and missed because I suck.
fluff.
At this point, Winchester, it's guns time. By the way, you're witnessing my very first air-to-air gun employment ever. I suppose there is an easier way to do it, perhaps by locking target, but I went full guts and easily hit the target anyway. See, he was playing Warbirds totally out.
What the fuck? I didn't reach. Aha, noob.
Next, I switched back to the best seat to rebuild to situational awareness. I remembered that I had a wingman. Useless, because the AI in DCS is terrible, but I unleashed it, nevertheless. Soon after, however, the mission was successfully concluded, with a few remaining bombers swept away by the other friendly fighters. So, key points. This was the only mission I played as an #solo rear. More tests are required to reach a conclusion. So far, we can say that the pilot is not really necessary. In fact, besides startup departure, AHRS, gyros, rear action, weapon setup, usage of guns, M9, conversions, other maneuvers, recovery, landing, they're not needed. So if they were, the list would be much longer, isn't it? Jokes aside, I have the feeling that playing from the backseat is better, as the SA is much better and easier to achieve, and the tactical level is much deeper. However, as we have seen, there is a non-irrelevant back and forth between the seats, a symptom of how a good crew workflow is necessary to obtain good results. Moreover, as we've seen, playing mostly from the backseat allows you to position the Tomcat in an advantageous position, depending on the situation, something that is hard to achieve when playing strictly from the front. For example, consider the first conversion. Despite being hampered by Iceman turn's rate and my displacement turn, he got the job done. Even something as simple as this is not needed when you're already keeping an eye on speed, altitude, heading, and scanning outside, and so on. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this light-hearted video, and see you next time. Take care.